but it's always best to let them have a say. Yeah. Members, the Housing Committee on the Environmental Protection Agency Bill and the Dairy Industry Restructuring New Sunset Provisions Amendment Bill is resumed. Before the dinner break, we were considering Clause 1 of the Dairy Industry Restructuring New Sunset Provisions Amendment Bill. The Honourable Damien O'Connor had the call and has 3 minutes 50 remaining. The Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm just looking at the title of the bill, Sunset Provisions. This by no means, I hope, means when you want to take the dairy industry on its way out. But who knows if this national government was to get back in. I know that they would like to restructure the dairy industry, that's right. There's an admission. Mr Speaker, while the Minister's in the chair and able to answer a few questions, following on from my part speech earlier on, I'd like to ask the Minister whether the review, and I understand that took place and he may have before him recommendations on the review of the DERA regulations. And so Labor's support for this bill, which is an interim bill, which is, as I say, possibly a waste of time, but an interim bill to guarantee supply to independent processors. The Minister announced that review, and I understand that there are recommendations back before him, so I hope he can bring to this House some wisdom so we can, in discussing this bill, know exactly what his ideas are for the DERA regulations into the future. Is he going to remove them? Is he going to ensure there is access to other independent processors, either for export or for domestic? Labor's preferred position is that there should be ongoing supply for domestic production, but the supply for export competitors of Fonterra needs to be seriously looked at, and it's something that it is important we put on the table. So our support for this bill is not to guarantee supply to competitive exporters into the future. It is to ensure that there's ongoing supply to the domestic market. Mr Speaker, there are a lot of questions around the dairy industry at the moment. We just spoke of some of them with the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency Authority, and I guess the likelihood that they will be looking at large-scale expansion of dairy. That's all well and good, and we like to see that with the right environmental protections. But one of the big questions hanging over the industry is the level of foreign ownership. And the national government has allowed Synlait to be purchased by majority foreign shareholding.
Clause 1.
Clause 1, that's right, Mr Speaker. And it is around the restructuring. Synlait take milk through the DERA regulations. Synlait currently, yes, they do. Minister's trying to say no. They take milk.
We're on the title, Clause 1.
On title, on Clause 1, that's right. The Dairy Industry Restructuring New Sunset Provisions Amendment Bill, Mr Speaker. And as I say, the DERA regulations enabled many companies to take milk and to set up in competition. So you know, we don't want to be confused here about titles or anything like that. We need to know that this is about basically an odd commercial arrangement that was laid down when Fonterra was set up, and the reasons for it were that the dominant position that Fonterra has in the market required some access to milk for independent and innovative producers, and we did that, but we've seen emerge some large export competitors of Fonterra who continue to access this milk, and it is important that we review the situation, and I hope the Minister takes a call and explains where he's got to with that.
Call Colin King.
Thank you, Mr Chair. It's good to be speaking during the committee stages of this particular bill, Dairy Industry Restructuring New Sunset Provisions Amendment Bill, and it triggered a bit of a thinking from this side of the House when we heard the member on the other side talking about farming going out of fashion, because when we look at that particular title of the bill, It was probably in the 1990s that Helen Clark was talking about the dairy industry and all the primary sector industries being a sunset factor, a sunset industry. So it's probably quite appropriate that we actually have the Dairy Industry Restructuring Sunset Provisions Amendment Bill, and one wants to just think about the role that at the moment the primary sector is playing in the most difficult economic times in New Zealand. I would imagine...
This is a memorial to Helen Clark.
I'd say it's more of a memorial tomb to Helen Clark, in the sense that this is really sort of the thing that when you listen to a number of the Labour Party members speak, you think the world didn't start until 2008. There is a legacy there where they have actually failed the primary sector miserably. So to have this bill here with a very able Minister David Carter taking it through the House, it is extending provisions to ensure that the primary driver of this nation's economy has certainty. And that's very, very important. So I would just advise the members on the other side of the House that we don't want to treat lightly the importance of this legislation. So the Dairy Industry Restructuring New Sunset Provisions is pertaining to providing certainty going forward until we get everything else in order so that we can address the substantive matters. So the title is very, very appropriate from the point of view that it just reminds the Labour members over there, and I do have some sympathy for the former member for West Coast Tasman, because he is probably the final remnants of any rural representation within the Labour Party. And when he goes, we'll know that we will have no longer
Order.
a dairy representative with a dairy representative on the other side of the House. They will continue to be teachers, academics and misguided unionists. So, Mr Speaker, this is a very, very important bill.
Title.
We're
on the title.
The Dairy Industry Restructuring New Sunset Provisions, and it is an appropriate title, even though it does sort of remind us of what the Labour Party said back in the 1990s, that the primary production was actually a sunset industry. So, Mr Speaker, it is a very appropriate title. And it needs to be one that's treated with great reverence and respect, because this bill transitions us beyond where we were with the original bill, or that is now the Dairy Act, that came in 2001, and it bridges that gap until we get something that's more appropriate. So thank you very much, Mr Speaker.
Dr. Asher,